President Joe Biden set to visit the Lone Star State.
Yeah, he's headed to Austin, where he is set to speak later on this afternoon.
The president may unveil a proposal to dramatically reform the Supreme Court. This is because the High Court currently has no enforcement mechanisms for their own behavior.
The president is seizing on some historic disapproval of the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court recently is basically being accused of, we conform to the rules of ethics because, shut up, we conform to them.
We should note these changes would need congressional approval. Biden is likely to endorse establishing term limits for justices and an enforceable code of ethics.
Texas versus Biden. Let's dive into the drama surrounding the Biden administration's border security dispute. This saga involves legal battles, political maneuvers, and a dash of intrigue that could rival any soap opera. Buckle up. The central issue here is Texas's bold move to tighten its border security through a law known as SB 4. This law essentially criminalizes crossing into Texas anywhere other than official entry points. If you've been denied entry before and sneak back in, you're in for even more trouble. Plus, Texas judges can send illegal entrants packing back across the border. Sounds straightforward, right? Not so fast. Enter the Biden administration stage left. They weren't thrilled with Texas taking such a hardline approach and challenged SB 4 in court. The administration argued that this law oversteps state authority, intruding on federal immigration powers. The federal district court agreed and slapped a preliminary injunction on SB 4, halting its enforcement and calling it facially invalid. Facial invalidity means the law isn't just problematic in certain cases, it's fundamentally flawed across the board. This isn't about a single person's rights being violated, it's about the law itself being unconstitutional. The court's decision sent a clear message: Texas, you can't play border cop this way. But Texas wasn't about to back down without a fight. They found an unexpected ally in a recent Supreme Court decision, U.S. versus Rahimi. Now, this case originally had nothing to do with immigration. It was all about the Second Amendment, questioning if restricting arm possession for those under domestic violence restraining orders was constitutional. The Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that these restrictions violated the Second Amendment. Texas saw an opportunity. Texas argued that if individuals can claim self-defense rights under the Second Amendment, the state should have the right to defend its borders under the same principle. They contended that the federal court's injunction against SB 4 was unjust and used the Rahimi ruling to bolster their case. Texas claimed the lower court failed to meet the necessary burden of proof to justify the injunction, and that Rahimi underscored their right to enforce SB 4. In essence, Texas is leveraging an arm rights case to argue for their right to implement strict border control measures. The state's legal team is saying, if we can protect our right to bear arms, we can surely protect our borders. This legal chess match reflects the broader national debate over immigration and states' rights. The Biden administration is focused on maintaining federal control over immigration policy, emphasizing humanitarian and legal protocols. Texas, on the other hand, is prioritizing border security and state sovereignty, framing their actions as necessary for self-defense. The dispute over SB 4 is far from over. As Texas pushes its argument up the judicial ladder, we're sure to see more twists and turns. Will the Supreme Court take this up? Will Rahimi's precedent hold in this new context? Only time will tell. In the meantime, the border security debate continues to sizzle, with Texas and the Biden administration locked in a high-stakes showdown. Whether you're rooting for the feds or the state, one thing's for sure, this is one border battle that's far from settled. High Court upholds restriction. The Supreme Court delivered a landmark decision on Friday, upholding a federal law that prohibits individuals under domestic violence restraining orders from owning arms. This ruling marks the court's most significant stance on arm control in 2 years, bringing both relief and ambiguity to the ongoing debate over Second Amendment rights. The case revolved around a 1994 law challenged by Zaki Rahimi, a Texas man convicted of violating this statute after a series of shootings. The court's 8-1 decision, with conservatives and liberals joining forces, represents a victory for armed safety advocates and victims of domestic violence, signaling a notable shift in the judicial landscape regarding arm ownership restrictions. 2 years prior, in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the Supreme Court had set a precedent that arm laws must have a historical connection to be deemed constitutional. This ruling required lower courts to delve into historical analyses, seeking 18th century analogs to modern arm laws. However, the recent decision clarifies that exact historical replicas are unnecessary. Instead, modern laws must simply align with historical principles. Chief Justice John Roberts, in the majority opinion, emphasized that individuals posing a clear threat of violence may be disarmed, aligning with historic legal traditions. When an individual poses a clear threat of physical violence to another, the threatening individual may be disarmed, Roberts wrote. He acknowledged that while the 1994 law isn't identical to founding-era regulations, it fits within the historic tradition of disarming dangerous individuals. Despite the 8-1 ruling, the presence of 5 concurrences, particularly from conservative justices appointed by Donald Trump, reveals ongoing adjustments within the court's conservative action regarding the historical test established in the Bruin decision. This indicates that the court's approach to Second Amendment issues is still evolving. Roberts critiqued lower courts for misinterpreting the Bruin ruling, while Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson suggested that the High Court itself had failed to provide clear guidance. This reflects the broader struggle within the judiciary to balance historical context with modern legal challenges. Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, both Trump nominees, defended the historical approach, arguing it offers a more reliable framework than policy-based evaluations previously used by lower courts. Kavanaugh outlined a method for weighing historical examples of arm laws, emphasizing the importance of Supreme Court precedents as a primary reference. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, another conservative voice, has raised concerns about the court's historical approach in recent cases. In her concurrence, Barrett criticized lower courts for seeking near-identical historical analogs when evaluating modern regulations. She argued that this stringent requirement forces contemporary laws to mimic outdated policies, resulting in what she described as a law trapped in amber. While the decision is a win for armed safety advocates, it leaves critical questions unresolved, particularly regarding when the government can disarm nonviolent criminals. This ambiguity may invite further legal challenges and necessitate additional clarification from the Supreme Court in the future. The ruling also underscores a broader judicial tension between adhering to historical precedent and addressing contemporary issues. The justices' differing opinions highlight the complexities of interpreting the Constitution in a way that honors historical intent while accommodating modern societal needs. The Supreme Court's decision signifies a cautious but significant step toward balancing arm rights with public safety concerns. By affirming the federal law, the court has reinforced the principle that the Second Amendment does not preclude reasonable restrictions aimed at preventing violence. However, the nuanced positions within the court suggest that the debate over arm control is far from settled. Future cases will likely continue to challenge the boundaries of the Second Amendment, prompting the court to refine its approach to reconciling historical context with present-day realities. Rahimi case impact. The ongoing clash over Texas's SB 4 has turned into a legal roller coaster, with twists and turns that have captivated everyone watching. Here's the lowdown on this high-stakes drama. Initially, the Biden administration challenged Texas's SB 4, a stringent border security law, and won at the lower court level. This victory led to a universal block on all aspects of SB 4, effectively halting its enforcement. The court ruled the law is facially invalid, meaning it was deemed unconstitutional in all circumstances, not just specific instances. Texas, refusing to concede, quickly appealed this preliminary injunction to the Fifth Circuit. In response, the Fifth Circuit issued an administrative stay on the lower court's universal block, essentially putting a block on the block. This maneuver temporarily allowed Texas to continue enforcing SB 4 while the legal battle progressed. In another twist, multiple cases related to SB 4 were consolidated at the Fifth Circuit level. The consolidated plaintiffs, including the Biden administration, sought emergency intervention from the Supreme Court to lift the Fifth Circuit's administrative stay. However, the Supreme Court declined to intervene early, siding with Texas by not removing the Fifth Circuit's stay. But the plot thickens. On the same day the Supreme Court decided not to step in, a three-judge panel from the Fifth Circuit removed the administrative stay on their own accord, effectively siding with the Biden administration again and halting SB 4's enforcement. This case has moved swiftly through the courts. Just days after lifting the block, the Fifth Circuit panel held oral arguments on whether to grant a more permanent preliminary injunction in favor of the Biden administration, which would block SB 4's implementation more permanently. During these arguments, questions arose about whether the U.S. government could seek such broad equitable relief against Texas. Judge Oldham, one of the dissenting judges, voiced concerns, agreeing with Texas that the federal government couldn't pursue this type of universal block. Amidst this legal back and forth, Texas submitted the U.S. versus Rahimi case as a precedent to argue against the facial challenge brought by the Biden administration. Rahimi, a recent Second Amendment case, dealt with whether restrictions on firearm possession for individuals under domestic violence restraining orders violated constitutional rights. The Supreme Court had ruled that for a facial challenge to succeed, it must be shown that no set of circumstances exists under which the law would be valid. In simpler terms, the government only needs to demonstrate that the law is constitutional in some applications. Texas argued that the district court erred in its facial invalidation of SB 4 by focusing on hypothetical scenarios rather than concrete applications where the law might be constitutional. They claimed SB 4 aligns with federal statutes and is necessary for state self-defense, particularly against violent transnational cartels. Texas insisted that Rahimi's precedent should apply, and the Fifth Circuit should uphold SB 4 in at least some of its applications, dooming the Biden administration's facial challenge. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.